Hello, everyone. I am Heidi Ferguson, and next to me is Fereshta Ramsey, and this is Fierce Honest Hearts. So, before I do my regular check-in, I just want to share with you all that starting on August 10th, 8/10, which is in 2 weeks from today, Fereshta and I are going to be starting a course, an online course. It's 8 weeks. It's called Authentic Relating, Even When It's Hard. And it's a 90-minute course for 8 weeks, like I said. And what we're going to be offering and teaching are tools where you can learn how to have what might be a hard conversation, just better communication skills, how to move towards those things that you might be struggling with. It's going to be an experiential course. So we're not just going to give you the tools and leave you high and dry. We're going to actually do practice in the time that we are together. And I think it's also really important to know that we're inviting anyone and everyone, and you don't have to be partnered. You can be partnered. You don't have to bring your partner. You can bring like whatever facet of life you're in. And the other thing I want to mention too is that this course will meet you where you are. So no matter how much work you have done or have not done on yourself, I want you to know that this course is for everybody. We are welcoming everyone, whatever, skill level you're at, because we just feel like the way we're presenting the material, it is going to be, it'll be gettable, if that's a word. It'll be attainable for everyone. And and I think the one thing that I want to add to this little bit here is that we ask that you show up as yourself. Just show up with yourself, with your lovely, beautiful self, with your heart as open as it can be, with your mind and your ears as open as they can be, to receive, because we really have a lot to share and to give. So I think that's where is there anything to add, do you think? We're good with that? Good, okay. So my check-in, wow, okay. My check-in is that I'm so happy to be here. I'm feeling a lot better than I was even 30 minutes ago. I was kind of feeling in a lull, and then I thought about, oh my God, but I get to see one of my best friends, and I get to laugh with her and just smile and share where I am in my life, and that feels really good. So I felt this surge of energy. I'm like, oh, that's happening. I can't wait. So anyway, that's really true for me. And I returned yesterday from spending a few days with family, and it went well. For the most, I will say just overall went well. There was one little snafu, but it was easy to get through. And I'm really pleased with how that has changed. Like, it's changed in a big way, even in the last 6 months, year, whatever. There's just less conflict, if you will. And I will say it's probably, because I've done work, we've all done work, we're all kind of finding different ways to relate, because, conflict, who wants and needs conflict unless, sometimes it's necessary to get through to the other side, but sometimes I feel like we created ourselves, and I'm like, I didn't have to do that, and I don't want to do that. So, so that feels good to me. I think I'm going to stop there, and then we'll kind of move on.
I love the little volley over quickly. I was like settling in to hear more, and I love that. Yeah, I love what I'm hearing you say is an acknowledgement to your growth, and maybe the growth in others, that you were able to come together in a different way and it felt better. So that feels really promising to me. And then I just want to share that when you shared your excitement on the text, I got excited. right? As you know, I tend to juggle many things and then go from one thing to the next. So to get that acknowledgement that you were excited, I was like, oh, I'm excited too. So thank you for just kind of pre-paving that energy by naming that. That felt good to me. And my check-in right now, well, it's gonna sound, actually, I don't know how it'll sound, but I'll just say, I worked on my new website on a Saturday. Came back to it after a vacation, so I was a little more clear and had some creativity. And I put it up thinking, okay, one thing done, on my list. And it has had these domino effects in my energy, in my life, because it feels so much more like me. It feels authentic to who I am right now. So I actually feel like sharing it and I'm excited to share it with people. And then it's also having me want to bring more infrastructure to my business so that I can leverage my time to help more people. And the thing I want to lift up is that it's the one thing I've procrastinated on for a year. And what I'm noticing is it's probably the biggest needle mover. So I get really curious about procrastinating on the thing that's actually moving my energy forward, and whether there was fear there, right? Whether that's fear of overwhelm or whatever. But it was quite interesting to notice, like, this was the thing I just wasn't willing to do, maybe until I was ready. And probably because it had some big implications that I'm only now feeling into. Yeah. So that's helping me know I could guide people through their procrastination gently, right? Like, wow, there's resistance here, but what if this is actually the thing to do, the thing you want to avoid doing? Yeah, so that feels important to me. And I kind of feel like a boss babe right now. A friend of mine coined that term, and I was like, I like that, boss babe, of being like, life is sweet. It's summertime. I'm swimming in lakes. I'm kayaking. This is like my jam this time of year. And at the same time, there's something moving through me that's beginning to really be a businesswoman. And it's an exciting transformational path, as much as relationships, I think. Entrepreneurship is its own transformational path, like its own fire. And I'm digging it. I will have other meltdowns, I'm sure, but right now, I'm digging it. Yeah, that's my share.
Yeah, thanks. I'm completely relating to that because I've been on this path for a little bit longer. And God, the meltdowns, they can really be, right? They can be hard and they can be long sometimes. But I would also say, for those who are listening that are entrepreneurs or considering that line, that path, this too shall pass. We get through it. And it's a really important part of the journey, because we can't have the hard without the easy and vice versa. We just can't have the dark without the light. Like, we all, can't have one without the other. So, and I'm also really appreciating your sharing your truth and about the procrastination. Dear, that can really, we can, and I will speak for myself. I have gotten stuck there for a long time, and I'm like, is it because I want to feel safe? Is it because I don't want to take the next step? What is this about? And what I learned, I learned it the hard way, but what I learned, and I'm grateful, is that once I let go of, like, I was still resistant. I still had some procrastination going on, but once I shared it and I named it and I wasn't sitting alone with it, I was like, oh, all these other people are sharing the same thing. We've all had our stuff. We all have felt stuck at some point in our lives. And now I can get some support, right? Now I can move on with it or move through it a little bit more. It doesn't necessarily resolve it, but knowing that, I would say, knowing that we're not sitting alone with it is such a big piece, because when we don't name it and we sit with it and we feel whatever we have, I want to say hard feelings around it, that can keep us even more cemented in that space. Yeah. So
Yeah, I just want to say amen to that, because I think I'm going to use the word shame as just a catch-all
Yeah.
at this moment, but like shame is incredibly isolating, right? And as soon as you tell one person, man, I've been procrastinating on this thing that I keep saying is important, it does diffuse that shame because it's no longer in isolation. And then it's like, oh, now I've named it, right? And hopefully you have a friend that can hold you there, or a coach or a counselor that can hold you there. Then it's like, wow, okay, now what, right? And I have to say, who knows? I just don't know the magic of the universe, but I finally did it. And all of a sudden there are wheels turning. And it's sort of like, huh, okay, interesting. This thing that seemed like a no thing became the thing. And the real thing in all of it is how I feel energetically. Right? Because it's like the thing's not the thing, but if all of a sudden my spine is tall and I'm excited to share it and it feels like current, I think that's a big piece. The website from 2 years ago was me a week after graduating as a student, putting something together. I was like, this is good enough for now because I don't actually know who I serve. I have to start serving first. And now is this culmination of like, who has been called in the last few years? And what's the common thread between them? And I think you'll dig it because I pretty much say, I help people rock their relationships, even when they feel vulnerable, through authentic communication. So there's not the caveat of you're just going to feel amazing, right? It's going to be like, even when you feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
There's authentic communication skills. Or as we've said, especially.
Yeah.
When you feel vulnerable.
Yeah. Oh, that really hits. It hits. I mean, it hits home, and maybe for some people it hits hard. And I want to. And so what I'm feeling is like, oh my God. And you and I, in our expertise, we have a lot of these skills that we really do want to share with people, and we do want to teach people because. And there's nothing wrong with you for not knowing, because I didn't know this until I knew it. You didn't know it until you knew it, right? So, yeah, I want to say this as a general statement. Relationships, I think a lot of people believe that, oh, it should be easy. Relationships are not necessarily, you don't want to go into it thinking, oh, this is going to be like a snap. It may not be. And I would also say, if it's someone that you really are interested in romantically or whatever, even if not, and you just want to have a platonic friendship, but an authentic relationship with this person, it is worth it to stay with it, to stick with it, to get the skills so that you can have that kind of relationship with people. Whoever's watching, this relationship between Fereshta and I did not happen overnight. It did not happen without its flaws or stickiness or whatever we want to name here. We've really had to work on it. And thankfully, we both come to it with open hearts. And I will speak for myself. There have been times when I'm like, oh my God, I don't know that I can do this. I'm scared to do this. I'm feeling this, but I really want to because I love this person. I care about her deeply. I care about our us. And so with Fereshta's support and also my own support to myself and reaching out and speaking my truth and being heard and witnessed has been a game changer. It has made all the difference in the world. And so that is what we're teaching. I didn't realize we're going to be talking about, which is totally fine. But it's really important to say this because people don't know how to do this. And you and I, this is this is our language. This is what we do, right? This is for me, I'm like, it's like the back of my hand. I'm very familiar with it now. And I would also say that there are other relationships that I find a little bit more challenging. So, and I'm working on those, right, with these skills. And I realize that in other relationships, I might have to come at it from another direction or in another way, or maybe use different words that I would use with you, right? Like we can't, but we figure those out. And like I said, if it's really meaningful to you, don't give up. Believe in yourself, believe in the trust that you have with this person, if it's there for you. Yeah.
Oh gosh, you just spoke my heart. Hell yeah. And I say, brave the intimacy because you're worth it. Right? A lot of people think, oh, this is hard. Of course it's hard, right? Nobody said a deep, meaningful connection's just a given, right? And I think some people walk around with that fantasy, like, I'll just find my people and it'll be easy. And it's like, good luck. Good luck when there's a conflict. Do you have the skills? And I don't say that to be like tough lovey, but it's like, if you do not train for your relationships, I find it to be the equivalent of, you say you want to run a marathon, but you're on the couch. You don't even know how to run the first 5K, right? And then people fall into this shame spiral of like, I had a breakup, it failed, it didn't work, or I blew it up with a friend or a parent or whatever. And I think like we train for all these other things. And how did we get into I'm going to call it a cultural narrative that we don't train for our relationships? I mean, 3 years ago, before I signed up for my certifications and the deeper psychology of intimate relationships, which is really interpersonal psychology, I didn't know this stuff. And I, on some level, wish I knew it earlier in my life. And on another level, I'm like, great, I got it now, right? I call it, especially with our authentic relating, even when it's hard workshop, it's the education you never had. The relationship education you never had, which makes me mad a little because I kind of want to stand for people that we should know this stuff. I know more about Napoleon than I did about how interpersonal stress creates certain dynamics, right? So I know I'm fervent about it, and you and I clearly have a love of nurturing our relationships, and they're teachable skills, right? So even if someone watching right now, you're like, I just blew everything up in my life, I have no idea how to do this, and I've kind of done this all my life. They're teachable skills. They're practical skills. They're powerful skills. And we saw it when we did I keep calling it the Quaker gig, right? But when we did the conference with Stephen Porges and Sue Carter and the amazing people we had in our crew, you learn and then you go try it out in the dojo of your life. Right? Because life will show you where your work is.
It always does. It always does, 100%, Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that because, yeah, while I was visiting family, I wanted to, like, I was curious about some things, right? And so I sat with these people and I opened up this conversation and I just said, so I'm curious about when this happens, I'm curious where you are, like how this is, right? And how it is for you. And I realized that in the response that I was getting, that the person I was speaking to really didn't have a clear understanding. And I really thought I was making it as basic, as simple as possible, but they weren't getting it. And so, and I was like, okay, so rephrase, reframe, whatever. And this still, I mean, it was really kind of like resorting back to, I would say, you know, almost like early childhood, kind of, you know, because of the wounds, etc. That I don't know what those are, but right. And so I was like, okay, I'm glad to have that information, right? And so now in that relationship, not only do I have a lot more, I mean, I've already really developed a lot of compassion, but my compassion is even deeper. So now I'm less about, okay, so can this person relate in this way or not? Just kind of go to them and really, really be cognizant to meet them where they are. And so I'm like, okay, I can do that, and so the reason I'm saying this is because the one thing that we talk about a lot in the course is the sacred pause, just slowing down, right? And so this person tends to kind of go at a 180 like a hamster on a wheel, like, you know, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to keep up, but then I'm like, and after this conversation, I'm like, no, I really need to slow down the energy and then maybe get this person to kind of model, like I'm modeling, maybe this person will meet me there or meet me halfway, or at least feel the intentionality and the slowness of my energy, right? To meet me so that we can relate better. So these are I'm mentioning this because this is another thing that I think that in relationships, we just we want to forge ahead. We want things to kind of work out and we want to move on and we want to move on quickly. And sometimes they do, like there's some things that we can get through pretty quickly and some things take a little bit more time. And in this fast-paced world where at the click of a mouse or the tap of a touchscreen, whatever, we can order something, it's like it's in our hands within minutes. It's kind of insane. But with relationships, we are not wired like a computer. We are not wired like Wi-Fi. We're just not. Human beings are meant to be taken care of, to be loved, to be heard, to be understood. And that cannot be done at a fast pace. It just can't be, especially when there's been some damage. So the other thing that you mentioned, when you said, when people say to you, I've blown this thing up, right? I've blown this, I've messed up this relationship, whatever. And I get that it might feel like that, but it could also just be the one thing. There might be one thing that there was some conflict around and you feel like, oh my God, that feels so big. I have messed up the relationship. Come back to yourself. Come back to yourself and ask yourself, did I mess up the whole relationship? Or is it that I just need to apologize for this one thing and sincerely apologize for this one thing? And then we can repair. So I want to talk a little bit about the repair. So I'm going to pause because I've been going on for a little bit. But yeah, I think this is so rich. It's really good. Yeah.
I can feel your passion and I just love it. I adore it because it matches my own and I'm just so glad we're holding a container for people to go there.
Yeah.
The piece that came up for me when you talked about like nurturing the human and how that takes time, right? And sometimes I'll say me, I have to endure difficult feedback about myself or just difficult feedback about a situation, right? And maybe a blind spot for me. And the reason I'm bringing that up, and I put this in a reel on Instagram, is, I had this experience with my partner where it was late at night, we were getting ready for bed, and he was very intently looking at his phone. And I was like, hey, is everything okay? Being super referential, because I do not check my phone that late of an hour. And if I did, something had to be really up, right? So I was being self-referential. And I asked him, is everything okay? I was also being self-referential in that if I was staring intently at my phone at bedtime, I would feel super cared for. If he
Uh-huh.
said, hey, is everything okay? Right? Like, is there a thunderstorm? Is something up with your parents? Like, what's going on? Right? And what he shared with me is that he felt hovered over, given his own history.
Mhm.
And I was fascinated, right? But for me, in order for me to stay fascinated and curious, I had to self-regulate. Because what I was also hearing was like, hey, you're like helicopter momming me, and I don't feel trusted. And it was like, oh, geez, okay, like I was just trying to care for you and track you. But instead of defending, right? Hey, I was just trying to show up as your partner and be a teammate and like WTF, right? I was like, tell me more. How come this makes you feel hovered over and mistrusted? And, because he said something snarky and I was like, okay, that's weird. Um, and in self-regulating, because it was difficult, it was messy, right? I got to be human and be curious about his experience. And then also deeply fascinated because we were staying neutral. We weren't being, it could have started a conflict.
Mhm.
And the reason it didn't is because I stayed curious and I leaned in. And I was like, how come that feels that way to you? Right? I didn't make him wrong. I didn't shame him. I didn't defend myself. I didn't justify. It's like all these moves we make from the scared animal. I just kept breathing. Right? And we even got into bed and I was like, wow, this is such a fascinating difference between us. If you were tracking me, I would have felt cared for. But you're telling me when I tracked you, you felt mistrusted. Wow, cool to know this, right? And then the really interesting part was like, he wants less tracking and more spaciousness. That's less work for me. Groovy. I got a lot of other epic shit to do. This is a win. Now, if my partner had just eaten it, dealt with it, not spoken up, not given feedback, not named his truth, clearly there would be resentment bubbling over there, and likely with enough resentment, contempt, right? And I'd have no idea. I would not be given that intel. So I think I'm sharing the story just to say we do a disservice if we don't tell people our care instructions, right? We do a disservice if we don't trust that they might be able to handle it. Now, some people are just going to defend themselves and justify and do the scared animal thing, right? Have compassion for that. But I noticed, I'm going to say, my capacity to be with my discomfort, because I went through the like, I've done something wrong, he's upset, right? Those gateways. And then it was like, oh, wait, he's just trying to share something that's different about him. Not wrong, different, given his childhood, given his wiring, given maybe even his values, right? So it's complex, and permission to be messy. I'm a relationship expert and educator, and I still bumble through that kind of stuff. So I just want to ground that. I might have the training and the skills, but it's two people in a dynamic. And, you could crack a joke one day and have the person chuckle, and the next day they're like, WTF, what the hell was that about? Right? You got to always work with those ever-changing dynamics. Does that make sense? I went on a tangent, but it felt important.
No, I think it was a great tangent and a great example, And the other thing that I want to name that I noticed when you were sharing that is that without, and I mean, this is what I perceive, like being able to notice all these things in the context of that period of time, right? Something in you slowed down enough to be able to notice these things, right? So yes, you're using your skills and you're using the right language and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff, and still having feelings, right? But slowing down enough to be like, okay, I'm doing my best to track myself, tracking partner, tracking this, tracking that. And so here we are. I've decided I'm going to be more curious this time, ask these questions, right? And this is how I'm dealing with it. It's something to learn. It's something to learn that I never knew about this other person. And now that I have this information, I understand more. I get it. It totally makes sense.
All behavior makes sense when you really stop and think about it.
Yeah.
And I think I was actually correlating it to, even though I didn't say it out loud, what you were talking about around slowing down, right? Because he sped up in his activation. And so in staying slow, staying steady, I was lending my nervous system to him, right? I was co-regulating. I was like, okay, you're sped up. I'm not going to speed up with you, because that would be a huge disservice, right? That becomes adversarial quickly. And it was like, wow, if I stay slow, you can spin out a little, but you'll come back because I'm lending you a slow, steady, compassionate pace.
Right.
So to your point, right? Like sometimes you have to actually ask that person to slow down. And sometimes with your presence, you could slow them down. And there are times I haven't had the good presence for that. And I've had to say, I need you to slow down. I need you to slow down for us right now. That's too fast. That's too loud. That's too hot. And I'm losing capacity to listen. There's also naming it.
I think naming it is probably one of the most important things, you know. And then I also want to mention, when we're co-regulating, what we're doing is, in a sense, is having the other person match our energy. Because if one person's here and one person's here, like on a scale of 10, one person's at an 8 or 9 and the other person's at like a 5, and they're feeling really balanced, and the 8 or 9 is, you know, really stressed and anxious and all these things. If we can remain neutral as possible, that person will come. And if so, in other words, if we don't match this energy and we stay really balanced and calm, and they might not come down to a 5, but they will come down. That energy will be matched. I mean, I don't even know what else to say about that. It's what happens energetically. It happens. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with crowds of people. Which is kind of amazing, where one person is on a stage, everyone's crazy or everyone's making noise, and one person can be in the middle of the room and they're quiet, and then you just kind of see this visceral change in the world that you're in, the environment. You're like, oh, and then everyone's quiet. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. I think of in quantum physics, it's like being the dominant frequency.
Yes.
It's not exactly being the alpha, but it's like, if I hold this dominant frequency, people will feel it. It'll be a transmission. It'll be a download. And some people will take the download. Some people won't, whatever.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you say that, right, I think of how, like, we're talking about this like it's easy. So I just want to name that it's so effing hard. And it's hard because as mammals, it is counter-instinctual.
Yes.
Counter your instincts, right? Someone puffs up big and adversarial, you puff up big and adversarial, or you run, right? Either way. So the ask here is counter-instinctual, but it is efficient, right? We had a couples coach. It was great. She knew our love of kayaking. She knew our love of getting to lakes on the weekends and swimming and kayaking. And she said to us once, this actually was like the greatest advice because it linked to our lifestyle, right? She said, you two are in the parking lot, putting the kayak on the roof, and you get in a fight. What are the tools you're going to use to get to that lake as quickly as possible, right? And it wasn't like bypass the fight. It was like, if you really wanted to get to that lake and kayak together, you're not going to use the same crappy strategies that have you fighting for 3 hours. You are in the parking lot, kayaks on the car, Google Maps has the directions to the lake. What are you going to do to get to the lake? Right? And that means going against every instinct to fight. It's like, oh gosh, I really did something to really hurt this person. It's the last thing I wanted to do, but I did it. And it wouldn't bother me. That's the little trickster. Well, that wouldn't be an issue for me, right? But it might be a 12 for them and a 2 for you. So you still got to hear it. And I actually get excited. This is weird to admit in conflict because I'm like, oh, I'm going to get care instructions. Now, would it be better if we gave each other care instructions from the get-go? Sure, but I think that's what conflict's about. We don't know till we're rubbing up against, each other's values or needs that there's a care instruction there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so much. Yeah. I want to reiterate, none of this is easy. I was not born with these skills. Neither were you. These are learned skills. And even though, you and I are experts in what we do and we've worked at this and whatnot, and we're great at teaching it in our own relationships, I have to work so hard to remember. I'm like, okay, stay aware, stay cognizant, keep your heart open as much as you can, Heidi. Like all of these. And I also want to say there are also some little things too that I have to remember along the way that are helpful to me. But yeah, to put it into practice in real life, it's like you said, it's counterintuitive. It can feel really scary. I would say it feels super vulnerable to even take that step to be like, okay, I know I want to do this. I want to fight against the whatever. I want to fight against the system. I want to do this. I want to attack back. But this is actually going to be a lot more effective. And I think at the end of the day, I want to be as effective as I can. And for me, what that means is that when I'm sharing something or when I'm in life, when I'm in a relationship with people, that we're both on the same page and that we both can come together and have an effective relationship, have a healthy relationship where we really see each other and we hear each other. I've spent my life doing the other, and I'm like, okay, we can make this work. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love this conversation because it's leading me back to our workshop, right? The reason we created this is because you're gonna need to demystify your fears and demystify how your body reacts in conflict. And so we're not handing you just a bunch of PDFs of information and curriculum and knowledge. We're going to have you wrestle with it. And I say that as an invitation, not as a deterrent, right? Like, come in, learn with peers who are learning the same things, practice in a safe container, demystify what happens to your nervous system when it gets scary, when it gets threatening, when it gets hard to hear, right? And practice with like-minded people, because this is about training your nervous system. Like, make no mistake, this is about you developing the capacity for more discomfort. And I know that's not a great selling point, but if you can create more capacity there, you can listen to people and you can hold yourself and you can know your goodness and you can still hear their feedback, and it doesn't have to fall into shame or self-blame. It can fall into, I want to do better next time, right? And so I just want to welcome people. If you're ready to brave it, if you are just sick and tired of doing it in a way that's not serving you or the people you love, especially your high stakes relationships, right? Like, we might not clean it up with the register person or I don't know, maybe we could, right? But like your low stakes relationships, you might not have the time to clean up every single one of those. But when it comes to your high stakes relationships and how much they impact your health and your well-being, I believe, for what it's worth, that you're worth it. The person that loves you is worth it. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a heavy, heavy lift or a steep climb. Sometimes I know even with you and I, we have to sometimes hold our discomfort and keep communicating, right? And it's not like we've had massive crunchy moments, but even the little crunchies, we've had to regulate ourselves and stay open-hearted. It is doing the reps, right? If you want incredible relationships and you can only do 7 push-ups when it commands 50, come do the push-ups with us. It's training. And I want to name that, because some workshops are like someone's lecturing, or it's PowerPoints, or it's like, right? It's like, no, you're going to learn stuff and then you're going to practice what you just learned until you feel equipped and empowered to go do that in a high stakes relationship. Or maybe you start with like a medium stakes one and see how it goes, right? Yeah. Anything you want to share around that? Because I feel like we're creating something really special in that it's experiential.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to share something around the experiential piece. So, in our relationship, so for those who are listening, as I've said a million times, so in my relationship with Fereshta, I come from a school, meaning life experience, of just kind of being super direct and sort of not always, but a lot of times just like it lands where it lands, right? And not really thinking about the consequences all the time, and not necessarily taking others into consideration all the time. And so I've been messy. I've had a lot of messes in my life. And then, I've met people where I'm like, this one is different. This one, I definitely want to attend to more. I want to do it differently. And so I think the way that I saw you is that I was like, wow, she's really gentle. She's really kind. She's really sweet. I have those qualities too, but they're not necessarily so visible all the time. Not that I'm nasty and mean, but right, we all have our little things. And so I would say for me, because I really wanted to be your friend and I wanted to build something with you, I was like, so I'm going to model this. Like, I'm going to model being softer and being kinder and opening my heart more, right? And allowing myself to be more vulnerable, because this is someone that I think I can trust. Like, that was how it was. You've been friends for a really long time, right? Like, I'm going 3 years now. It's been longer than that. But anyway, and so because of that, like, if I could have just even half of those things where I launch into a new friendship or a relationship, that would be such a game changer for me. So I would say it's really great that I've had this experience to get out of my own way, and I feel like you encourage me to be courageous with all of it. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot, Heidi.
I'm like, give me fierce intimacy or nothing at all.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know if this looks like or feels like or sounds like, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the hard thing, and totally. Right. And also the trust piece. I think, if you're in a relationship with someone, there has to be trust. And because I feel as if trust was built from the get-go with the two of us, it just kind of was I felt like, for me, it felt very organic. And so there was never a question about, is there trust here? I was like, she's bringing it. I'm going to bring it too. We're going to do this. I, again, don't know what it looks like, but I'm going to bring myself here. And I really have. Like, I have to say, I'm really proud of the work that I've done around, just with myself, but also with you, and being able to show up the way that I show up, whether or not it's in bed with kidney stones, like to be seen like that. I didn't like, I have to tell you, in that moment, I didn't think about it until you were like, wow, you really let me in. And I was like, wow, I really have let her in.
Yeah.
That's important, people. So again, for those who are listening, I want for everyone a deep and sweet and loving and trusting and great communication kind of relationship for everybody, because we all deserve it and we all really need it. We all really, really need it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're asking you to risk more emotionally, and yet it's the most transformative and nourishing thing. And some parts of you are going to fight it, and that's okay too, right? We can love those parts. So I just want to thank you, because I felt so loved on by your share, and I feel so seen in that part of me that just wants to be a Care Bear and wants to be like loved by other Care Bears. And I'm just touched that I had that impact on you. And I also want to share, my growth edge with you, which had been, instead of like my little side crab walking or my little cushioning of things that like, it's like, wow, nobody's getting these little hints, I throw out, that you encouraged me to be direct with you. And for me, that required trust and safety. Because to be direct with someone who might just like blow up in my face or not be able to receive it felt really scary to me. So our friendship allowed for me to be like, I feel safe here and I feel trusting here. And I can do that really vulnerable, God, I don't want to thing of saying like, hey, I have this need, or I got to go, I'm fried, or whatever the situation was. And so I feel like you brought me a light shadow that I got to own and reclaim, which was, I can be direct of my needs, my boundaries, and the right people are going to respect that. And the wrong people, like, they're welcome to orbit out, because after tasting this kind of friendship, it's raised the bar on anything I'll allow into my life. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so touched. Thank you. Ah, that's so sweet. It feels really good to hear that.
Yeah. Thank you for modeling something that I would say was a dream.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Of what's possible in a friendship, to like, oh wow, we do this all the time.
We do it all the time. Yeah.
And that's the hope I have for everyone, is think beyond your wildest imaginings. You might have good, but you could have great. You might have great, there could be extraordinary. Right? So think just one step beyond maybe where you're at, and consider that with the right community, some really powerful tools. That thing you say you want, which is like deeper connection, as confronting as it might be, you'll be held in practicing it. Because I just think we grow when we're held like that.
We do. We really do. Yeah. Thank you, friend. Oh my God, this was such a good one.
Yeah. As always, thank you for showing up, right? I mean, this isn't possible if we're not both bringing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you to our audience, right? If any of this resonated with you, just drop us a comment. We love to hear from you. And if you have questions, if you have reflections, if you have a struggle right now,
Yeah.
bring it. Permission to be messy if you need it. And know that we're here for you. And we would love to see many of you at our workshop starting August 10th, which is Authentic Relating Even When It's Hard. And you can search that on Eventbrite. And I think on the YouTube, we'll just place the link in there for you. And if you have any questions, or there's a part of you that's like a hell yes, and there's a part that's hesitating, reach out to us.
Please.
Yeah. If there's anything in you that's called to it and you need a few questions answered, we're here. Yeah. Thanks, friend. Thank you all.
Yeah.
So much love.
Shall we do a chat pat before we close?
Oh, hell yeah. Let's do it.
It's been a while. Okay, I love this question. What do you believe is the greatest truth of all?
It's going to sound super cliche, but I think love truly does conquer all.
Oh my God, that was mine.
Is that really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly, no questions, 100%. I believe that is true. I believe it.
I want to like high five you and like dance around or something.
On that note, thank you, everyone. Until next time, we'll see ya.
So much love.